Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Colony. So a very interesting episode where it's basically showing the events a little prior to the arrival / the arrival itself, which is something we've already heard details from everyone back in season 1. It's just a lot of the main hitters finding out like where they were and everything, like Will and his family, as well as Schneider, just kind of how they got to where they are now, just everything that kind of led up to them, as well as Bouchard too. To me, the first thing that kind of came to my mind was because I went ahead and knew that this was going to be part of the season, just because I saw the previews and everything. But I didn't know it was going to be like the first episode of the season. And even then, if it is part of the season, I was expecting it to be a fraction of an episode. I wasn't expecting it to be the whole episode. But then again, it was a situation where they kind of had to show you everything, plus some things you didn't know had to be included and kind of set up. Like, for example, the fact is Will has a partner when he was working with the FBI named Devin. Granted, we happened to jump in the day of their arrival, like him and Devin are at odds because Will had found out that basically Devin was taking money from some very unsavory people. And he had a big problem with that, but rather than turning her in because she was his partner, like they've been partners for 5 years, he doesn't want to like do that to her. He figured the best thing to do was just to be transferred away, like, I think it like to a different division or something like that, just because it would be less hubbub because, it's just like, there'll be less questions that way if he does things that way. Which Devin was super hurt by it because it's like, yo, we've been partners for a while. At the very least, give me a chance to explain that, which there might be a legitimate reason behind it. I mean, I don't know what that reason is. I mean, maybe that's something we'll kind of find out. Because initially I was like, oh, because the fact is, like, Will has never really talked about his FBI days at all. That's not something that was ever really brought up. Don't know if it's ever anything that's really going to be brought up, other than the fact it's like, oh yeah, that basically what he's doing now as a collaborator is basically a reflection of what he did back when he was with the FBI, tracking people down. So that's why this whole Devin situation is like, oh, but then obviously you can tell from storytelling purposes, it's like, oh, they're setting that up because like, I was like, oh, so either it's going to be a situation where he ends up finding out she's dead. Like I knew they were going to obviously cross paths. Wasn't expecting it to be at the end of the episode like it was. It's like, oh, because he's coming to her for help. But it's like, because she ended up getting out of town, out of LA before things got too crazy. It seems that she's in Santa Monica, where essentially where Charlie is. But obviously I'll get to that later on and stuff. But she just had this weird feeling, and she was like, yo, tell me your gut isn't telling we should bounce. But, Will being who he is like, yo, we can't just, like, run. Like, the fact is, we got our jobs to do. We got to be here to help figure whatever the hell's going on, And she was just kind of like, well, see you around, Will. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that progresses forward. Things with Schneider were kind of interesting too, because it's interesting seeing Schneider before he was the man with all the power and stuff like that, because we've never seen, well, to a certain degree, we have seen him without power. Obviously, at the end of the last season, I mean, he got stripped of his position as proxy, but this is just him. It's just an average dude. And then it's like, oh yeah, like you've been selected because of this algorithm, and these agents are talking to him. And interestingly enough, in the conversation, one of the agents is like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 critical mistakes someone makes in their life. And it's like, oh, so that's where he got that from, where Schneider got that from, because he ends up telling that to Will the first time they meet, and he's offering Will the job he currently has. Which in the context of the show, I get it. It's like, well, yeah, they kind of reflect upon that line here. It's like, I guess the show, it's to kind of bring up the parallels of how that line is kind of an introductionary line, because it was used first before introducing Schneider to the host and everything, like kind of opening his world and his mind to being like, oh, there is something much greater out there. And, for Will, it was introducing them to, like the collaborator kind of be like, okay, this is the path with everything that's happened in your life. This is the right path. You're back on the right path that you need to be on. Those mistakes, yeah, you're allowed to have them, just because it means you can have an opportunity to kind of make up for them with the path you're being sent on, essentially. I know I'm not phrasing that well, but that's the best way I can phrase it. There's that whole interesting thing, though, when Schneider actually met one of the hosts or rap. I just prefer just referring to them as host. But when he met he had on these, it seemed like special headphones which I'm guessing is a means of translating, because it's something I never really got the. I feel like it got very pushed in this episode. I didn't really get that necessarily from the previous season. It was something that was alluded to, but it's like just how well in advance people knew, because it's like all this kind of went down in a day. Because even I think Phyllis even brought it up in comparison, like of last season. She was basically like, hey, basically everything went down in a matter of 8 hours. I don't know if it's specifically LA or was it the world in general, but I think it's specifically she was talking about LA was occupied under like 8 hours because they were basically powerless, because obviously it ended up taking out a lot of things for them, because a lot of electrical stuff got shut down, like phones, planes, because that's how the whole Rob situation, Maddie's husband, the whole thing happened, as well as just everything electronic got shut down. It's just kind of like a gigantic EMP bomb went off, essentially. The point I was getting across is like the fact that you had these government agents kind of type of people, you know. Okay, we also got to meet Helena at like, you know, before you know, her introducing Schneider and being like, okay, this is going to be, how's it feel to know that you're going to be the most powerful person in LA soon, type of situation. So, but I mean, because the point is that the host knew everything to know about Earth prior to them getting there, because they'd already retained a lot of information. And I'm curious, is that going to be something we see, especially this season, since they're kind of going back a little bit? Will it be a situation where we go like, oh, hey, everyone, like we see when they first actually got her, or will that be an element that's never really touched? I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, because even in this, like I said, even in this, we never actually got to see everyone's backstory, because there's certain characters I'm not sure if you actually will. We get to see Phyllis's backstory, you know, it was brought up. Quayle's backstory. I mean, considering the character statuses, I'm guessing they're not really going to delve into it too much, I guess, because they're only focused on characters that are still alive and characters you get to see a lot on occasion. So, but it was also like I said, kind of along the same lines of seeing Schneider a little bit differently. Bouchard is someone else we saw differently, because in this we saw him, you know, in a certain situation smiling, as kind of almost happy, and at the same time also saw him confused, because like seeing him happy was never anything like that in the first season. But like, and confused is because he always had he was always like clear and being like, oh, this is my mission, this is what I got to do. He's always focused. You know, obviously there were moments in season 1 he was confused, but more often than not he was cool, calm, and collected. And you see him just stumbling, you know, he's getting back home and everything, and he's just not really sure exactly what to do with himself, and where he fits in and everything. And also we kind of go back to the position of him and Katie. Apparently, like, that was a big fat lie that basically she only met him when he introduced her. It's like, no, apparently her and Bouchard kind of have a past, because she's like, oh man, I haven't seen you in ages. So it's like she's known him for a while, especially because she welcomed him into the bar. I mean, to me, the conversations like they had back in season 1 made it seem like, oh yeah, obviously he stopped by the bar a little bit before everything went to shit. But it's like, nope, it was even way before that. So it's like, even then she lied about their relationship. It makes you wonder, was there something between them in the past or something like that? Because we actually got to see, because I was wondering where everything was going to play out for him, because initially he went to this place that basically there are a lot of top ranked people who are essentially in the security business, the private security business. Him and a lot of, like, you know, one particular dude he knew, but there was like a lot of other people around that or in that same job area. And he's like, okay, don't you think it's weird that we're all collected here? And the guy wasn't really listening. He's like, you know what? This kind of smells very fishy. I'm a bounce. He leaves just in the nick of time too, because immediately after he leaves, the building is flattened. So, I mean, and then you also see some of the things that kind of led to him being, I guess, I'm sure one of the big things that kind of made him the person he is later on is the fact is losing his mom. Because he even brought it up, like, basically his mom died from the shock. She was very sick, but the shock of everything happening, she died of it. And, you know, I'm sure that kind of made him very cold-hearted and made him kind of shut himself off. Especially because, like, she died. It makes it even more messed up because she died the day that he got back home. Like, literally the day he got back home. I thought it was like he got a little time with her. It's like, no. He got to say hi to him, but he's like, okay, you rest. And it's like, boom, later that night she dies. It's like, holy crap. That was a big turnaround. And it's like, it's ununderstandable why he'd be the way he is. I mean, I'm sure that's the big reason why he fights, is because of that too. It's just kind of like that their arrival kind of took away like his main reason for coming back home, took away the only thing he had left in his life to hold on to. And then there's the whole situation with the wall, which I wasn't expecting it to be the way it was. I guess in my brain, I was thinking like either, obviously, I had my feelings like the host built the wall. I thought it was like, okay, they built them up when they kind of occupied LA, but it's like, nope. The wall pieces literally fell from the sky, landed, and then connected. And it's like, holy crap. That was most of the episode, but there was that little bit at the end of the episode, like I said, that brought up earlier, the whole situation with Will still looking for Charlie. Obviously, we go back to present day kind of, and he's looking for Charlie, but he can't find the guy that Charlie's with named Solomon, who was kind of slightly introduced last season when Charlie was like, oh yeah, we could trade this to Solomon for something good. So trying to track him down, catches Will a knife. I guess, obviously he doesn't want to go around flashing, his badge or anything, because that's just going to make matters worse for himself. It's going to, I'm sure it's going to bite him in the ass, because it's like, that would get him killed even quicker. And I guess he doesn't want to fight back. I feel like because he could have handled himself, but he let him get self-stabs. So I'm guessing he mainly didn't fight back because I guess he felt like that was going to draw too much attention. It's like the only way he's going to be able to find Charlie is if he's very discreet and below the radar type of situation. So like I said, asking Devin for help. Because that's another thing too. I'm like wondering if that's the case, if that is the case that Devin has been out there, maybe she's the one he was staying with, because we never really found out who exactly Devin, not Devin, Charlie was staying with. I'm assuming with the whole circumstances, it's whoever this Solomon person is. But it's like both Devin and him have been in the same area. So it's like, especially because Charlie knows her, like the whole family knew Devin. So it's like, why didn't he try and track her down sooner? Or maybe he was staying with her. Maybe things got complicated. Maybe he currently is staying with her, but still dealing with the whole Solomon. I don't know. The fact is that he came to her asking for help means that maybe she hasn't had any contact with Charlie subsequently since the arrival and whatnot, Then there was also the Bram situation. Like I said, like we didn't get a complete update to everything that was going on. Just like little bits, because it's like Bram is stuck in the situation he's in. He's kind of obviously going underneath the wall, taking that secret passage that everyone thinks is like, oh, that's associated with resistance members and stuff like that. So obviously he's arrested, and it's like, oh, can you do it? Like the only reason why Katie was able to get in is because of Maddie's connection to Nolan, and that's because of Nolan's connection. So, but no one can do anything, especially because Will definitely can't do anything because he's off looking for Charlie. So it's like they just kind of have to deal with this situation. So, like I said, a lot of this episode obviously was set up for this season. So it's like, I'm curious how certain things are going to play. It's like, we still don't know where Schneider is. Like, subsequently when he was taken away by Garza and the other Red Hats at the end of the season. We don't know how things in the block are going to change with a new proxy, that being Nolan's boss, like where he really stands in all this. The fact of the matter is, Schneider went out of his way to make sure Nolan's boss is the one that would take over. So I guess he feels like his boss would be more likely to kind of keep the same ideals. Because that's the thing about Schneider's character. It's like, that's something you learn pretty early on in season 1, is like he had asshole tendencies. Like he wasn't always the best guy, but he was a guy that was kind of thrust into this position, trying to make the best of it. Like he did try to handle things very well, because it's like he's the only person that handles his block the way he did, like trying to be fair, not trying to rule it with an iron fist. He tried to be fair. He has some strict rules and everything, just like Will said. It's kind of like Schneider is the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So I'm curious to see how things in the block will change because of this. Also, what's up with Broussard, as well as those other 3 he was hanging around with. They're like, I'm curious, is that all that's, I assume that, the 3 that, were with him when the host got kidnapped last season, like that escaped with him, I'm assuming they're the last of the sale here in LA. So it's like, where are they going to go? Are there going to be new recruits this season or what? What's going to happen with Bram and everything? Is he going to especially because his mom is telling him to be, be smart and be strong. So it's like, I'm curious to see where his story takes. Is it going to be a situation where like they try and take him to the factory? Will Will be able to get back in time to help him? I mean, there's so many questions. Because something I was thinking about, because I was rewatching season one, it's like, when Will does eventually come back or whatnot, like, I don't remember, because it's been a long time, so I don't remember what exactly I said during the season finale. But sometimes I was curious, like this, will this season kind of pit him and Jennifer as like, is Jennifer going to be his new beau? Because obviously him and Beau, like, they were pretty tight, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, what are we going to, it's like Beau found out a lot of things and he had Will's back about it, and it seems like nearing the end of the season made it seem like Jennifer was doing the same thing. So I'm curious if that is what we're going to see going forward. Also, will we see any Beau this season, or is he, I get the feeling he's going to pop up. Maybe. I guess we really will have to wait and see, because all of it is 100% conjecture, because we haven't really done much progressing. It's just kind of like hey, this is where things were. This is a tiny, tiny peek to show you where things are now. I wonder how much has actually changed subsequently since that host was taken. So it's like, obviously the deal was, that stuff that Schneider had passed on to Nolan to pass on to his boss. Like, obviously that kind of calmed the waters a little bit, but I'm curious to know, has any other things changed subsequently because of the host getting taken? We really, like I said, really won't know until like the next episode when things kind of progress forward. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.